Okay, let's take this character just a little bit further without going too far. And then we're going to break this up into some components that we're going to develop. And we're going to dig a little deeper into sort of the process or the way that I think when developing from the silhouette up. So let's go ahead and address some of the leg area. I'm just going to hide the arm here. Let's go to move, and let's move this around a little. Well, this might be changing the silhouette too much. Does that work? We talked about, we had pulled these back a little bit. I'm going to pull them back just a little bit more. See if that works. Not sure yet. These are very heavy. These have got to be very strong, or they appear heavy. They have a lot of mass to them. Alright, well, let's just address this here. Let's get our smooth, stronger brush back. There it is, smooth. Smooth, stronger. Let's really start to affect some change on this model. Now there's a certain element here of this structure that isn't repeated in the hips, but what if we did that? What if we just brought this in a little bit and then created a little bit of a similar bony shelf here. Does that help us? Yeah, it looks interesting. I think I would want to bring them up. A little bit more. He has to be able to have some sort of gait. There has to be some lift, stretch, drop action here with the leg. We'll work out some of these mechanics as well as we go forward with a few tests. Now it is bipedal, so it shares some human anatomy, but I want to twist that. I did this for a reason. I created that size there, and I don't want to lose it. I want to try and create something from that bulbous form. I'm just unsure how at this point, but we're going to tackle something different here, I think. Yeah, I mean, an idea is beginning to form me about how I'm going to address that. Let's turn perspective off. Where is my center? Okay, we're still fine. Just move this in and bring out this the same way this is here. Just a little indentation. It's on both sides. So am I affecting the overall? Not too much. I'm not affecting the overall silhouette very much with this type of adjustment, so I'm feeling okay about it. So I'm making the best choices I can, given the silhouette, thinking about these pieces and how I can make minor changes to give the mechanics a chance to work with the silhouette before I abandon them. I think it's always worth exploring for sure. Let's take RGB off. And also off of smooth here. So I think I'm going to want, I'm looking at, we have a flap of skin joining the knees, so that's going to have to be fairly flexible. Right now it looks like 2. Let's make a decision here. It's not really affecting the silhouette, but it will affect the mechanics. If we're going to have something like that here, let's give it a good chance to work by keeping that membrane a little bit thin and uniform. We can put in some stretch lines later. I think it's worth leaving in and kind of exploring how this might work. Let's remove the floor. Excuse me if you can hear the phone. I'll let the studio line pick that up. Now the one thing I'm getting is there's a nice indentation curve here. He feels like his knees are outward a little bit. I wonder, I might affect, just going to see if that affects it poorly or not. I will leave them out for now. I'll just bring the hips in a bit. Kind of like that. Okay, I still don't know what these are yet, but we're going to, whether or not they are flexible or otherwise, mechanical joint. Well, that's the fun, trying to solve that issue. What I'm thinking here is that I'm just trying to define if this is going to be a knee-like object, where is the next bone in line. If it shares any sort of similarity to human anatomy, we've got the femur there, and then we have to worry about the fibula here and tibula if it's going to rotate. I'll think on this a little bit more. I don't mind. I wonder if shell-like form, does that help us if it's this, if we consider it a solid? Since we have shell-like shapes in our context library, if I make this a solid sort of edge, does that help us if that is maybe a shelf of bone or minerals or something? This, again, like I got myself into a mess. That's going to be a tough one. But what I do feel like is I know this is going to bend, and I don't want to tweak this too far yet. There's an awkwardness about this shape right now. I think that still, I mean, it's a little awkward, but it does fit. It might just be in the length of the torso. I may have to, I'm just going to modify the length of this and see if it works. Just giving him a little more length. Does that change it? Bring it forward, it seems unbalanced. There roughly seems good. So not a huge change to the silhouette, but still, I think an unnecessary one. I'm going to leave, I know this is not sort of a standard glute type of shape, but there is something interesting about the concept of a shelf like this, and I'm wondering if I can bring a little of that into here. I really want to bring that in. Does that help us? I wonder if I bring this out a bit, just change this line slightly. I'm pretty subtle with my changes off the start, but that's going to, the reasoning is going to become apparent when we've sort of addressed elements of the entire model here. So I think also what's missing is sort of a lat muscle. Part of the trapezius. Lat muscle's not really there yet. Do I need a lat on that style of arm? Just the way I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I think it would lend a nice little form here. Let's try it and see. There's no reason not to give it a go. Let's just pull a bit of form and let's blow something in there with the clay brush. And I don't think it's about having a muscle there so much as maybe this profile might read a little stronger if it weren't so straight. So I'm thinking something like that. Just a little bit bigger, curling around, heading towards the spine. at a, an angle that we all recognize. Inverted teardrop shape. Does that help? It doesn't really read much from the front. It needs more here. But that really isn't, that's more like the stratus muscle. Can I leave it and make sense of that? Well, the ribs are there. They're a little longer. We may develop this a little bit more into serratus. Sorry, not stratus. Serratus muscle. And, what would be an oblique or external oblique riding a hip bone, we have to address that. If we change how we develop the hip to make this leg function, we have to address the connection to the rest of the body. So I'm going to leave this area for now because I want to talk about some of these components. Now normally, I would be thinking about these and as I worked over the entire body, bouncing around back and forth. But I think the best way to address this in the class is essentially to tackle different areas of this form or our forms one at a time. Now let me just develop this lower form just to bring it sort of all to the same level here. And then I think we can start talking about certain components that we can see. I did that there. I started adding a regular glute, and I don't want to do that. I want to leave that alone until I've had a chance to think about the mechanics of this. I'll just return that back to roughly what it was. Okay. Alright, let's leave that for now. You know what this is missing? It just needs something. Something there. Actually, don't mind that little drop off there. There's a nice motion here, up on the tip of your toes type of motion. Does that look better thinner? That looks interesting. A little weak on this side, so let's lay that down. The clay, let's just see what this looks like with a little bit of dimension to it. Still not sure what to do with these, but I'm going to just turn perspective off for a second, and just so I can ground this character, I'm going to just take the clip rectangle brush. I've just picked outside the canvas, and I'm going to just trim off the bottom so he looks grounded. Think on that a little bit. Let's render that out and have a look. Yeah, it feels grounded. It's got connection to the floor. There's some nice stuff going on. Shape under the arm is a little awkward. I just put a ball in there. I gotta explain that. Well, I guess that could be part of the lat. So it would normally come in underneath or over top of the scapula, but let's just soften it a bit. Not too worried about this particular area right now, but I want to at least give it some thought. It looks a little awkward because the shoulders are so high on the frame. But I really kind of like that. I'm just going to drop in a little bit of a shelf here. Just to separate. I need a cue here about where the ribs end and the serratus muscle, which wraps towards the hip, might go. If it were an actual hip, it would run around to the front, it would drop down, it would join. And this shape is totally off, but I don't mind that if it's, you know, if we have to use similar mechanics, that's cool. But I want to be able to, well, start with what I know, and then I will change. You know what it's missing too is just a bit of a drop here. I think we tried to put it in before, but it was very subtle. If it does have the same muscle structure, it's going to need, though, some abdomen. Now, I mean, if the skin here is this thin, there's really not you know, a pectoral major, or you know, it's not linking up with a deltoid as we know it. You know, even the biceps are running up here rather than, you know, where you would expect them to run. Well, you know what? Those still run in the same area. There's just a lack of connective tissue here. Yeah, the sort of like the pectoralis major is just gone. So we'll have to address that. It's going to have to connect. Something like it is going to have to connect somewhere, and I wonder if it's not just right here. If we add a little down turn here, then this element, which we suggested earlier, becomes more like a, you know, part of a modified pectoralis muscle. I don't want to go too far with that yet, but I think that's not a bad idea. There's a lot of other mechanics to consider if that's the direction that we want to take. So let's say that does insert here. scrub that in. You know, and I'm just scrubbing it in like this because I want the clay to have a tooth. I want to be able to read that form a little clearer from over here. We can smooth it back if we want. And once you've assessed it, I think there's something cool going on there. I think this is going to become a very interesting element. And that sort of sunken piece there makes a lot of sense. The more and more I look at it. Yeah, subtle changes, subtle. Alright, cool. Now these feet are going to continue to be a bother, aren't they? Oh, it seems to be the feet. That's alright. We can make this really, really cool. Let's give this a little bit more bulk so it feels like it can support itself. And the weight that's implied here. There's a thinness here that I think we're going to have to really address. So I'd pushed it back earlier, but let's just build that up a little bit. Get that feeling just a little bit stronger. Yeah, okay. Well, there's an interesting form that pops out. Let's turn that floor off again. Again, there's that concept of a shell-like shape and something coming out of it. As soon as we put that little return in there. Right, and can we use that somehow? Now, one of the other things that I do, let's say, I'm pretty happy with generally how this is coming along. I know it seems slow, but it's, there's a lot of thinking going on. And normally I'd be blowing through this and making decisions really quick, but I want to illustrate, I want to slow things down a little and illustrate this process so that we're all aware of how, that one, there is a lot of thought going into it, and give you and myself time to really consider how this design is going to develop. So let's do one thing. What I often do is, okay, so we've established a silhouette. Now how can we adjust that without altering the form too much, but enhance some of the planarity of this so we can read it a little better? Well, we could go to clay polish, and we could do a clay polish on it, but we lose a lot of detail, that form that we've kind of worked with. You could fiddle with the settings and that kind of thing, but what I normally do is I'll grab either the clay brush and I'll work some edges. So I'll just, with Alt activated, I'll just create a corner and smooth down some faces and create a smoother line. So I don't mind doing that. I can try a little of that. So I like this line here. I'm going to sharpen it up on one side, smooth the other. Sharpen it, smooth it. So you got outside edge, which is strong, and outside edge, which is strong. This form is fairly strong, and there's a little stop here. There's a straightening out. My eye rests here a little bit. I wonder if I should go to the move brush if I'm going to do that. Does that help us if we move it in? Not really. pull that out a little bit. The continuation form seems like a better read. What I think's missing here, although we've tried to indicate it, is a change of direction right there. I just want to flatten this, move this in, and have a little harder adjustment here. So let's say that's kind of like that. Now, there's certain mechanics of the knee that really work, so I think what we'll do is go back to clay brush, so we stop doing that, but let's suggest yeah, I think that's the vastus lateralis. God, I can't remember these. I think. That's okay. Put that there for now. I just want to think, does that, if I'm doing the same mechanics, does it work? I think so. We're just joining to a different spot. And this bulbous shape won't work with that, but generally rolls to the back because it's pulling the lower leg back. Alright, we might be getting a little too far with this, but I'm going to just I'll try and finish it off because I have a specific assignment in mind to kind of help get us through these types of questions. Yeah, you know what, I'm going to add a few details, a few form changes inside the silhouette that might help us out here. So I'm going to bring this in first. This little split in the shape. I'm taking that sort of cue from the nuts that I like. I think it's a very interesting sort of form. And it kind of reads a little like a cloven hoof, but I don't think that's my intention. I have an idea for that I want to try. We'll see if it works out. Do a little of that here at the back. I just want to make these notes in the clay. I can always change them after, but while I have an idea, I want to go, okay, well, let's try this. Just some kind of note on the clay that reminds me to consider an idea. A little form change there. Something to consider there. All right, a little stretching. Since this character, I'm not going to give him standard reproduction organs. So I'm not concerned about terminating elements here. Abductor, that's what that is. It could be. Let's just indicate the possibility of some type of muscular connection here going to there. Alright, well, the shape's coming together. We're answering some interesting questions as we work. These may possibly become sort of shallows. I just think that the form change there is very interesting. And one thing I do want to try, we have this sort of upturn in the shoulder, caused by, I guess, what would be the trapezius in us. We have some kind of muscle here, but that form is missing. It's kind of repeated down here in terms of angle, but that little upturn on the shoulder is not down here. And I'm just going to try, just in terms of balancing the form out, I'm just going to see if a little upturn here, mimicking that, helps us or hurts us. It's different for sure. I think it goes along with some of the other bulbous forms that we're creating in the knee area, and I don't mind that. I'm just going to soften it just a tad. It's a very minor change, but I like the way it pulls the eye out. This is going to be interesting, this bottom part. So I don't want to make this, the thigh, any smaller, or this muscle structure in here any smaller than that, because it's got to carry, if this is heavy, this is like a solid hunk of bone or something, it's got to be able to carry that weight. Now if I can explain that away as we work, great, I'll make these smaller, but for now there's just something a little change in form I think helps us as well. Alright, so we've kind of touched everywhere. We've had some thoughts about certain areas of the body. There's a little dip here that wasn't addressed. Just want to make that slightly more uniform and read the shape from underneath. You can kind of see that adjustment in the shadow a little better, and just smooth it out. We'll leave that line of demarcation there just so we can tell where things start and finish. Some interesting stuff going on. Alright, and as always, let's just pause and save this. Sculpt 1, save, and yes, we will replace our old one. Okay, I'm just going to throw the floor on and do a render, and then let's have a discussion real quick here. Alright, so we worked through sort of week 2. We've created our silhouettes. We've selected 2 silhouettes, and I want you to bring those silhouettes up to this level, and then I want you to pause. In week 3, and I want this should be taking you, with an hour a night, up to 10 or more silhouettes. Select 2 and refine them should take you the week. And now in our next week, we're going to be doing We're going to dive right into this and get into some real serious detail, and we're going to start answering some questions biologically to address the forms that we've created in our silhouette. Now this really breaks down the process of life forming completely in a way that I think you'll find interesting. This coming week we're going to start with the head, and we're going to develop forms on the inside. So we're going to develop a skull based on the form here, or the form that you've created, and from the inside out figure out what works. We're going to be adding some muscles in that area. We're going to talk about sensory organs and the sensory package for our characters, and how to package it all in the skull and make it work. We're going to get right inside this thing and create those internal structures that are going to influence our final decisions for all the forms in the body. But we're going to start with this skull. All right, so bring your two pieces up to this level. Put some thought into it. Don't go any further than refining the silhouette in very minor ways. Start making marks on your sculpture where you're having questions. Develop some minor forms that we can build off of in the upcoming week, and we're going to get right into it and spend a week developing the skull and answering some internal questions that are going to drive the look of this character. All right, guys, take care and have fun.